The morning of August 6, 2005, dawned with the kind of serene beauty that belied the tragedy about to unfold. The Mediterranean Sea shimmered under the early sun, its surface a vast expanse of liquid gold stretching endlessly toward the horizon. At Palermo International Airport in Sicily, the ATR-72 turboprop aircraft, registered as TSLBB and operated by Tuninter, stood on the tarmac, its engines silent but poised for action. The aircraft, a workhorse of short-haul flights, was scheduled for a routine journey from Bari, Italy, to the Tunisian island of Djerba, a popular tourist destination. For the 39 souls on board, 33 passengers and 6 crew members, this was meant to be a day of travel, connection, and perhaps even adventure. None could have imagined that their journey would end in the cold, unforgiving waters of the Mediterranean. The ATR-72, a twin-engine turboprop, was known for its reliability and efficiency. However, on this day, a critical oversight would set the stage for disaster. Unbeknownst to the crew, the aircraft's fuel quantity indicator system, FQIS, was malfunctioning. The FQIS, a vital component that provides real-time data on fuel levels, had been incorrectly calibrated during maintenance. Instead of accurately reflecting the fuel on board, the gauge displayed a reading that was dangerously misleading. This flaw would prove catastrophic, as the crew relied on the faulty system to make critical decisions about fuel management. As the passengers boarded the aircraft, the atmosphere was one of casual normalcy. Families with children, couples on, holiday and business travelers settled into their seats, their minds occupied by the mundane concerns of travel, luggage, schedules, and the promise of their destination. The cabin crew moved with practiced efficiency, offering smiles and assistance, their routines honed by countless flights. In the cockpit, Captain Chafik Garbi and First Officer Ali Kabayer conducted their pre-flight checks, their professionalism masking any hint of the impending peril. The faulty fuel gauge, however, was a silent saboteur, its error hidden beneath layers of technical complexity. The flight took off at 12:10 p.m. local time, climbing steadily into the clear blue sky. For the first hour, the journey was uneventful. The ATR-72 cruised at an altitude of 16,000 feet, its twin Pratt & Whitney Canada engines humming steadily. Below, the Mediterranean stretched out like a vast, tranquil canvas, its beauty a stark contrast to the mechanical failure brewing on board. Inside the cockpit, the crew remained unaware of the growing discrepancy between the fuel gauge readings and the actual fuel levels. The faulty FQIS indicated that the aircraft had sufficient fuel for the journey, but in reality, the tanks were draining far faster than anticipated. As the aircraft approached the coast of Tunisia, the first signs of trouble emerged. At approximately 1:30 p.m., the right engine sputtered and died, its power abruptly cut off. The cockpit was suddenly filled with warning lights and alarms, a cacophony of sound that shattered the calm. Captain Garbi and First Officer Kabayer exchanged tense glances, their training kicking in as they worked to diagnose the problem. The fuel gauge still showed adequate levels, but the loss of one engine suggested otherwise. Moments later, the left engine followed suit, its roar fading into an eerie silence. The ATR-72 was now a glider, its fate tethered to the skill of its crew and the unforgiving laws of physics. The passengers, initially unaware of the severity of the situation, began to sense that something was wrong. The sudden quiet of the engines was unnerving, and the aircraft's gradual descent did little to allay their fears. The cabin crew, trained to maintain calm, moved through the aisle with reassuring words, though their own anxiety was palpable. Outside, the Mediterranean loomed, closer, its surface no longer a distant abstraction, but an imminent reality. Captain Garbi, a seasoned pilot with years of experience, knew that their only hope was to attempt a controlled ditching, a water landing that, if executed perfectly, could save lives. He radioed the nearest air traffic control, declaring an emergency and requesting immediate assistance. The response was swift, but the reality was grim. There was no time to reach an airport. The ATR-72 would have to land on the water, a maneuver fraught with risk. As the aircraft descended, the crew prepared the passengers for impact. Life vests were distributed, and instructions were given in calm but urgent tones. The mood in the cabin shifted from anxiety to a tense, almost surreal acceptance. Outside, the Mediterranean rushed up to meet the aircraft, its waves cresting and falling in a rhythm that seemed almost mocking. At 1:45 p.m., the ATR-72 struck the water. The impact was violent, the force of the collision ripping through the fuselage. Water surged into the cabin, its cold embrace swallowing seats, luggage, and people. In the chaos, survival became a matter of instinct and luck. Some passengers managed to escape through the emergency exits, their life vests keeping them afloat in the churning sea. Others were less fortunate, trapped by debris or incapacitated by the force of the crash. The Mediterranean, so often a symbol of tranquility, had become a scene of devastation. The ATR-72, once a marvel of engineering, now lay broken and sinking, its wreckage a grim testament to human fallibility. As the survivors clung to life rafts and debris, the enormity of the tragedy began to sink in. The faulty fuel gauge, a seemingly minor technical flaw, had set in motion a chain of events that would claim 23 lives and leave the rest forever changed. In the hours that followed, rescue teams would arrive, their efforts a race against time and the elements. But for those on board Tuninter Flight 1153, the morning's promise had already been shattered, replaced by a reality as cold and unyielding as the sea itself. The Mediterranean Sea, now a chaotic tableau of wreckage and survival, bore witness to the immediate aftermath of the ditching of Tuninter Flight 1153. The ATR-72, once a symbol of human ingenuity and connectivity, had been reduced to a fractured shell, its fuselage partially submerged and its wings jutting out of the water, like the broken limbs of a fallen giant. Around it, the sea churned with debris, seat cushions, luggage, and fragments of the aircraft, scattered across the surface in a grim mosaic. Amidst this flotsam, survivors clung desperately to life rafts, floating debris, and each other, their faces etched with shock and disbelief. The water, though calm by oceanic standards, was cold and unrelenting, sapping strength and resolve with every passing minute. The first to respond were the fishermen. Local boats, alerted by the sight of the descending aircraft and the plumes of smoke rising from the crash site, raced to the scene. For these men, who knew the sea as both provider and adversary, the sight of the wreckage was a harrowing reminder of its indiscriminate power. They maneuvered their small vessels through the debris, pulling survivors from the water with a mix of urgency and care. Many of the passengers were in shock, their bodies battered and their minds struggling to process the trauma. The fishermen, though unaccustomed to such scenes, acted with remarkable composure, their actions guided by a shared humanity that transcended language and circumstance. As the fishermen worked, the official rescue operation began to mobilize. The Italian Coast Guard, along with units from the Italian Air Force and Navy, scrambled to the coordinates provided by air traffic control. Helicopters buzzed overhead, their rotors slicing through the air as they scanned the water for signs of life. Ships, including the Italian naval vessel Etna, converged on the crash site, their decks bristling with medical supplies and rescue equipment. The operation was a race against time, as the survivors' exposure to the cold water and their injuries posed immediate threats to their lives. Among the survivors, the stories of survival began to emerge, each one a testament to human resilience and the capricious nature of fate. A young mother, clutching her infant, had been thrown clear of the wreckage and found herself floating on a piece of the fuselage. A businessman, his suit soaked and torn, had managed to inflate his life vest and help others onto a life raft. Yet for every story of survival, there was a tale of loss. Families were separated, loved ones were swept away by the currents, and The cries of the injured and the dying echoed across the water. The rescue teams worked tirelessly, their efforts a blend of precision and compassion. Divers plunged into the water to search for survivors trapped in the submerged sections of the aircraft, while medical personnel on the ships and helicopters tended to the injured. Hypothermia was a constant concern, and blankets, warm fluids, and medical attention were administered with urgency. The survivors, many of whom were in a state of shock, were gently coaxed into recounting their experiences, their words providing clues to the fate of those still missing. As the hours passed, the scale of the tragedy became increasingly apparent. Of the 39 people on board, 16 had survived the ditching and the immediate aftermath. The remaining 23, passengers and crew alike, had perished, their lives claimed by the impact, the cold, or the unforgiving sea. The survivors, though grateful to be alive, were burdened by the weight of their loss and the knowledge that their survival had come at a cost. Back on land, the news of the crash spread rapidly, drawing a mix of grief, anger, and disbelief. Families of the passengers and crew gathered at airports and hospitals, their faces a mirror of the anguish playing out at sea. In Tunisia and Italy, the governments declared periods of mourning, their flags flown at half-mast in honor of the victims. The aviation community, too, was shaken, as questions began to emerge about the circumstances that had led to the crash. Investigators from Italy's National Agency for Aviation Safety, ANSV, and Tunisia's Civil Aviation Authority were quickly dispatched to the scene. Their task was daunting: to piece together the events that had led to the ditching and to determine the cause of the fuel exhaustion. The wreckage, though fragmented, would provide critical clues, as would the flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder, both of which had been recovered from the crash site. As the sun set over the Mediterranean, the rescue operation transitioned into a recovery effort. The sea, now illuminated by the harsh lights of the rescue ships, yielded its secrets reluctantly. Bodies were retrieved with solemn care, each one a reminder of the fragility of life and the consequences of human error. The survivors, meanwhile, were transported to hospitals in Sicily, where they would receive medical care and counseling. The ditching of Tuninter Flight 1153 was a tragedy that would leave an indelible mark on all those touched by it. For the survivors, the ordeal was a harrowing reminder of their mortality and the randomness of fate. For the families of the victims, it was a loss that would never fully heal. And for the aviation industry, it was a stark wake-up call, a reminder that even the most routine flights could be undone by a single, seemingly minor flaw. As the night deepened, the Mediterranean returned to its tranquil state, its surface once again a mirror of the stars above. But beneath its calm exterior, the sea held the memories of that fateful day, a silent witness to the courage, the loss, and the enduring human spirit that had played out upon its waves. In the days following the ditching of Tuninter Flight 1153, the focus shifted from the immediate rescue and recovery efforts to the meticulous process of understanding what had gone wrong. The investigation, led by Italy's National Agency for Aviation Safety, ANSV, in collaboration with Tunisia's Civil Aviation Authority, was a complex and multifaceted endeavor. It required not only technical expertise but also a commitment to uncovering the truth, no matter how uncomfortable or inconvenient it might be. The stakes were high. The findings would not only determine the cause of the crash but also shape the future of aviation safety, ensuring that such a tragedy would not be repeated. The wreckage of the ATR-72, scattered across the seabed and floating on the surface, became the focal point of the investigation. Divers and salvage teams worked around the clock to recover every piece of the aircraft, no matter how small. Each fragment was cataloged and analyzed, its condition and position providing clues to the sequence of events that had led to the crash. The flight data recorder, FDR, and cockpit voice recorder, CVR, often referred to as the black boxes, were among the most critical pieces of evidence. These devices, designed to withstand extreme conditions, held the key to understanding the final moments of the flight. The FDR, which recorded parameters such as altitude, speed, and fuel levels, revealed a disturbing discrepancy. According to the data, the aircraft's fuel tanks had been nearly empty at the time of the ditching, a finding that directly contradicted the fuel quantity indicator system, FQIS readings displayed to the crew. This inconsistency pointed to a catastrophic failure in the fuel monitoring system, one that had gone undetected until it was too late. The CVR, meanwhile, captured the voices of Captain Chafik Garbi and First Officer Ali Kebair as they grappled with the unfolding crisis. Their calm but increasingly urgent exchanges underscored the confusion and frustration they had experienced as they tried to diagnose the problem, unaware that the information they were relying on was fatally flawed. As the investigators delved deeper, they turned their attention to the maintenance records of the aircraft. The ATR-72, registered as TSLBB, had undergone routine maintenance just days before the flight. During this maintenance, the fuel quantity indicator system had been serviced and a critical error had been made. The wrong fuel quantity indicator, FQI, had been installed, a part designed for a different model of the ATR family. This mismatch had caused the FQIS to provide inaccurate readings, leading the crew to believe they had sufficient fuel when, in reality, the tanks were nearly empty. The revelation of this error sent shockwaves through the aviation community. Maintenance procedures, which are supposed to be rigorously standardized and meticulously followed, had failed at a fundamental level. The investigation revealed that the maintenance team had not followed the correct protocols for verifying the compatibility of the FQI with the aircraft. Furthermore, the error had gone unnoticed during subsequent checks, highlighting a systemic failure in the oversight and quality control processes. The human factor also came under scrutiny. The crew of Tuninter Flight 1153, though experienced and well-trained, had been placed in an impossible situation. Unaware of the faulty fuel gauge, they had made decisions based on incorrect information, decisions that had ultimately led to the ditching. The investigation raised questions about the adequacy of pilot training for such rare but critical scenarios. Could the crew have done more to diagnose the problem? Should there be additional safeguards to detect and correct such errors before they lead to disaster? These questions, though difficult, were essential to improving aviation safety. As the investigation progressed, the focus expanded to include the regulatory and organizational frameworks governing aviation maintenance and operations. Tuninter, the airline operating the flight, faced intense scrutiny. The airline's maintenance practices, training programs, and safety culture were examined in detail, revealing areas where improvements were needed. The Italian and Tunisian aviation authorities, too, were called upon to review their oversight mechanisms, ensuring that such lapses could not occur again. The investigation was not without its challenges. The process of recovering and analyzing the wreckage was painstaking and time-consuming, requiring the collaboration of experts from multiple disciplines. The emotional toll on those involved was also significant, as they grappled with the human cost of the tragedy. Yet despite these challenges, the investigators remained committed to their task, driven by a shared determination to honor the victims and prevent future disasters. By the time the investigation entered its final stages, a clear picture had emerged. The ditching of Tuninter Flight 1153 had been caused by a chain of failures, each one compounding the next. The incorrect installation of the fuel quantity indicator, the failure to detect the error during maintenance, and the crew's reliance on faulty information had all played a role in the tragedy. The findings underscored the importance of vigilance, precision, and accountability in every aspect of aviation, from maintenance to operations to regulation. The investigation's conclusions would lead to significant changes in the aviation industry. New protocols for verifying the compatibility of aircraft parts were introduced, and maintenance procedures were strengthened to prevent similar errors. Pilot training programs were updated to include scenarios involving instrument, Failures, ensuring that crews were better prepared to handle such situations. Regulatory bodies implemented stricter oversight measures, holding airlines and maintenance organizations to higher standards of safety and accountability. For the families of the victims, the investigation provided a measure of closure, though it could never fully heal the wounds of their loss. For the survivors, it was a reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of learning from tragedy. And for the aviation industry, it was a sobering lesson, a reminder that safety is not a destination, but a continuous journey, one that requires constant vigilance and an unwavering commitment to excellence. As the investigation drew to a close, the Mediterranean Sea returned to its tranquil state, its surface once again a mirror of the sky above. But beneath its calm exterior, the sea held the memories of that fateful day, a silent witness to the courage, the loss, and the enduring human spirit that had played out upon its waves. The lessons learned from the tragedy of Tuninter Flight 1153 would echo through the halls of aviation for years to come, a testament to the resilience and determination of those who strive to make the skies safer for all. The ditching of Tuninter. Flight 1153 left an indelible mark on the world of aviation, a stark reminder of the consequences of human error and the importance of rigorous safety protocols. In the months and years that followed, the tragedy became a catalyst for change, prompting sweeping reforms in maintenance practices, pilot training, and regulatory oversight. Yet, beyond the technical and procedural improvements, the crash also left a profound human legacy, one that resonated with the families of the victims, the survivors, and the countless individuals who had been touched by the event. For the families of the 23 victims, the aftermath of the crash was a time of unimaginable grief and struggle. The loss of a loved one is always devastating, but the sudden and violent nature of the ditching added an extra layer of trauma. Many families found themselves grappling with unanswered questions, their grief compounded by the need for closure. The investigation provided some answers, but it could not fill the void left by the absence of a parent, a child, a spouse, or a friend. Memorials were held in both Italy and Tunisia, bringing together communities in shared mourning. These ceremonies, though deeply painful, also served as a testament to the enduring bonds of love and memory that connected the living to the lost. The survivors, too, faced a long and difficult road to recovery. Physically, many had sustained injuries that required extensive medical treatment and rehabilitation. Emotionally, the trauma of the crash left scars that would take years, if not a lifetime, to heal. Survivors spoke of the haunting memories, of the ditching, the sound of the engines failing, the impact of the water, the struggle to escape the sinking aircraft. For some, the experience led to a renewed appreciation for life, a determination to live each day to its fullest. For others, it brought a sense of survivor's guilt, a lingering question of why they had lived while others had not. Support groups and counseling services played a crucial role in helping survivors navigate these complex emotions, providing a space for healing and connection. Within the aviation industry, the crash of Tuninter Flight 1153 became a case study in the importance of safety and accountability. The findings of the investigation led to a series of reforms designed to prevent similar tragedies in the future. Maintenance procedures were overhauled with stricter protocols for verifying the compatibility of aircraft parts and more rigorous quality control measures. Airlines and maintenance organizations were required to implement enhanced training programs for their staff, ensuring that errors like the one that had doomed Flight 1153 could not occur again. Pilot training also underwent significant changes. Recognizing the critical role that human factors had played in the crash, aviation authorities introduced new training modules focused on decision-making, problem-solving, and crisis management. Pilots were trained to recognize and respond to instrument failures, with an emphasis on cross-checking data and relying on multiple sources of information. These changes were not just about improving technical skills. They were about fostering a culture of safety and vigilance, one in which every member of the aviation community felt empowered to speak up and take action when something was wrong. Regulatory bodies, too, took steps to strengthen their oversight of the aviation industry. In Italy and Tunisia, as well as in other countries around the world, aviation authorities implemented stricter auditing and inspection processes, holding airlines and maintenance organizations to higher standards of safety and accountability. International organizations such as the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, also played a role, developing new guidelines and best practices to help countries improve their aviation safety systems. The legacy of Tuninter Flight 1153 extended beyond the technical and procedural changes it inspired. The crash also served as a powerful reminder of the human cost of aviation accidents, a reminder that behind every statistic and every report there are real people, passengers, crew members, families, whose lives are forever changed. This recognition led to a greater emphasis on the importance of communication and transparency in the aftermath of aviation accidents. Airlines and regulatory bodies began to place a higher priority on providing timely and accurate information to the families of victims, as well as to the public. The goal was not just to prevent future accidents, but to ensure that when accidents did occur, the response was compassionate, respectful, and focused on the needs of those affected. As the years passed, the memory of Tuninter Flight 1153 began to fade from the public consciousness, replaced by new headlines and new tragedies. Yet, for those who had been directly impacted by the crash, the memory remained vivid and enduring. Memorials, both physical and virtual, served as a lasting tribute to the victims, ensuring that their lives would not be forgotten. Survivors and families found ways to honor their loved ones, whether through charitable work, advocacy, or simply by living their lives in a way that reflected the values and passions of those they had lost. In the end, the legacy of Tuninter Flight 1153 was one of resilience and hope. The tragedy had exposed flaws in the aviation system, but it had also revealed the strength and determination of those who worked to fix them. It had shown the power of human connection, the ways in which people could come together in the face of unimaginable loss to support one another and to create something meaningful out of tragedy. And it had served as a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is always the possibility of light, of learning, of growth, and of a better future. As the sun set over the Mediterranean, its golden rays reflecting off the calm waters, it was impossible not to think of the lives that had been lost and the lives that had been forever changed. The sea, which had once been a site of devastation, now stood as a symbol of resilience and renewal. And in the hearts of those who remembered, the legacy of Tuninter Flight 1153 lived on, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. The story of Tuninter Flight 1153 did not end with the recovery of the wreckage, the conclusion of the investigation, or the implementation of new safety measures. It lingered in the collective memory of the aviation community and the wider world, a somber reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of vigilance in the pursuit of safety. Years after the crash, the lessons learned from the tragedy continued to shape the way airlines, regulators, and maintenance organizations approached their work. But beyond the technical and procedural changes, the crash also left a profound emotional legacy, one that resonated with the families of the victims, the survivors, and all those who had been touched by the event. For the families of the 23 victims, the passage of time brought a mix of healing and enduring sorrow. The pain of losing a loved one never truly fades, but over the years many families found ways to honor the memories of those they had lost. Some established scholarships or charitable foundations in their loved ones' names, turning their grief into a force for good. Others found solace in creating memorials, plaques, gardens, or online tributes that served as lasting testaments to the lives that had been cut short. These acts of remembrance were not just about preserving the past. They were about finding meaning in the face of unimaginable loss, about ensuring that the victims would not be forgotten. The survivors, too, continued to grapple with the aftermath of the crash. For many, the physical and emotional scars of that day remained a part of their lives, a constant reminder of how quickly everything could change. Yet, despite the challenges they faced, many survivors found ways to move forward, drawing strength from their experiences and using them as a catalyst for personal growth. Some became advocates for aviation safety, sharing their stories to raise awareness and push for further reforms. Others focused on rebuilding their lives, finding new purpose in their families, careers, or communities. Their resilience was a testament to the human capacity for healing and renewal, even in the face of profound adversity. Within the aviation industry, the legacy of Tuninter Flight 1153 was felt in countless ways. The reforms that had been implemented in the wake of the crash became standard practice, shaping the way airlines and maintenance organizations operated around the world. The emphasis on rigorous maintenance procedures, enhanced pilot training, and robust regulatory oversight became a cornerstone of aviation safety, helping to prevent similar tragedies from occurring. The crash also fostered a greater sense of accountability within the industry, a recognition that every decision, no matter how small, could have far-reaching consequences. Yet, even as the industry moved forward, the memory of Flight 1153 served as a cautionary tale, a reminder that safety is not a destination, but a continuous journey. Aviation professionals, from mechanics to pilots to regulators, were reminded of the importance of staying vigilant, of questioning assumptions, and of never becoming complacent. The crash had shown that even the most routine flights could be undone by a single error, and that the stakes were too high to take anything for granted. On a broader level, the tragedy of Tuninter Flight 1153 also sparked a wider conversation about the human cost of technological and organizational failures. It highlighted the need for transparency, accountability, and compassion in the aftermath of disasters, and the importance of putting people at the center of safety efforts. The crash reminded the world that behind every accident statistic, there are real people, passengers, crew members, families whose lives are forever changed. This recognition led to a greater emphasis on the human side of aviation safety, on the need to support those affected by accidents and to learn from their experiences. As the years passed, the memory of Tuninter Flight 1153 began to fade from the public consciousness, replaced by new headlines and new challenges. Yet for those who had been directly impacted by the crash, the memory remained vivid and enduring. The lessons learned from the tragedy continued to shape the way the aviation industry operated, ensuring that the victims' lives were not lost in vain. And in the hearts of the survivors and the families of the victims, the legacy of Flight 1153 lived on, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring power of hope. In the end, the story of Tuninter Flight 1153 was not just a story of tragedy, it was also a story of renewal. It was a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is always the possibility of light, of learning, of growth, and of a better future. As the sun set over the Mediterranean, its golden rays reflecting off the calm waters, it was impossible not to think of the lives that had been lost, and the lives that had been forever changed. The sea, which had once been a site of devastation, now stood as a symbol of resilience and renewal. And in the hearts of those who remembered, the legacy of Tuninter Flight 1153 lived on, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. The end.